Hi, it's Tony here again. Well, I said I was going to do some more videos on the Tecnam panels now that they're complete. So finally got around to doing a quick video just showing all the panels, the different variants, the G1000 and the analog panel for the Tecnam, and the features and extra parts that I didn't show in my previous video on the Tecnam P2006T panels. So here we go. This is the G1000 left-hand side panel, and what you can see here on the left is pitch and rudder trim gauges, pitot heat, and an autopilot master switch. This is laid out as close as I could get it to the simulation, by the way. Lots of you know, license to change things around a little bit where you can't get them always exact with the layout that you've got on the panel, but these are pretty close, I've got to say. The analog one, there's a lot more going on because there's lots more instruments, so I've had to get a little bit more creative with those, but the G1000 one is reasonably representative, although there are some differences. An ELT panel down here on the left, and then some dimmers. All of these work, so I'll see if I can get the night mode on in a minute and show you those working. Then the master and field switches for each of the generators on each of the engines. Well, actually, I think they're probably. Oh no, they're Tecnam, so they probably are generators. Yeah. Then some avionics and cross tie switches here, and that's pretty much it for the actual electrical switches. Then we have a clock here. I've shown this previously before, mid-continent clock, and then a landing gear panel for the P2006T. That's particular to this aircraft. The generic G1000 bezel that I've shown before, and the corresponding audio panel, and a parking brake. So that's pretty much it for the left panel, other than to say that I do have up, you can probably just see in the top right hand corner here, a compass. So I can just touch on that, and I've got a vertical card compass just to bring up, and then I can touch it to make it disappear again. So not something that you may want all the time, but certainly something that you can bring into view when you want to. I've got one or two other little panels that are like that and operate in a similar way, that you can just make them disappear because they're not the sort of thing that you want on all the time. Normally, obviously, the whiskey compass, as some people call it, is normally up on a central pillar or out the way somewhere, so it's not normally part of the actual instrument panel per se. So that's why I chose to take that approach for those, but you can obviously choose to omit it completely. Some people I see have got hardware compasses, or they choose to put a compass on, maybe like a Cytec gauge or something like that, or a standalone little LCD screen or something like that. So the choice is yours really in terms of what you want to do with the compass. We'll go ahead and have a look now at the right hand side panel. So on the right hand side panel, not that different. I can't remember the exact configuration of what I showed before, but again, the G1000 MFD is there, the STEC 55X autopilot, my SAM electronic standby instrument is there. I've shown that in a previous video. If you want to see the details of that, there's another video up on the channel showing the full capabilities of that particular unit. Then a flap indicator and a flap switch, a series more of switches for lights predominantly here along the bottom to control the lights. I think these graphics maybe weren't here before, the tail number and the no smoking placard, and you can see this whole panel here is actually part of the overhead in the real aircraft. So I've chosen to put this as a pop-up panel. So again, you can see there's just a tiny little icon there in the corner that when you touch on that, it appears, and then you touch on it again and you can make it disappear. So when you start the panel up, the default is for it to start with it up, engines are not started, and these are the controls from the overhead panel. So you have, because it's a twin engine, obviously, you have two fuel controls, or fuels selector valve controls, and then you have dual ignition switches, left hand and right hand ignition for the left hand engine, and left and right ignition for the right hand engine, and then corresponding left and right fuel pumps feeding each of those engines, and then obviously a corresponding starter for each of those engines as well. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and do a quick start now, and you can just see the panel lit up, and then we'll go into like a night mode and show you it lit up in these white switches here and on the overhead, and the ones on the left hand panel will light up, and you can illuminate them with this instrument switch turned on. So it's Knobster enabled, which any panel that uses dials and switches obviously will be if you have a Knobster, which I do. So I click on a fuel selector valve there, and I can just very simply turn my Knobster to get it to use fuel from the left tank, as you can see what I've done there. Might be useful if we actually switch the master on. So what we're going to do here, this is going to be a bit awkward, but what I'll do is you can just see the standby instrument that's come on there. What I'll do is I'll switch the other panel on, so you can see low, and I'll switch the master on there. The PFD is on there, so I'll just do that again. Off. There we go. On. You can see the gear lights, the 3 green gear lights are on there, but pretty much everything else is the same. The clock is on the Avionics bus, and we haven't switched that on yet, so not much to see there. And then of course the engine gauges. Now, so it's a bit easier because I could make the panels a little bit smaller and try and squidge it all onto one screen, but what I'm going to do, well, I wouldn't normally do this, but I'm going to switch the Avionics bus on such that when I flick back now over to the other panel, here we go. We've got the MFD on, so we wouldn't normally have this on for start. We'd use the instruments from the primary flight display where the engine controls are, and then we'd turn that on after the engines were running. But so that I can show you this panel here, it's obviously easier to see it with this right side panel. So there you can see we've got some engine parameters on the Garmin MFD there. We've got our fuel turned on there, so I'm going to go ahead and switch the pump on, then the 2 ignition switches, and the starter. And you can see there as I push the starter, the manifold pressure dropping and the RPM coming up. So we have a started left engine now. We'll click over onto the right one. We'll do the same again. Fuel pump on. See, I'm not sure if I got that sound. No, we haven't actually got. I was just looking to see if we had fuel pressure. No, we haven't got fuel pressure. On the analog panel there is a fuel pressure gauge, but for some reason the G1000 doesn't have a fuel pressure, oil pressure or temperature. No. Oil temperature, oil pressure gauge is there, and then numbers on that page, but no fuel pressure. That's not very good, is it? Oh, I've never spotted that before, but anyway. So let's go ahead and switch the ignitions on this side, and then the starter. Are we watch so? Okay, you see the manifold pressure drops there, and the RPM comes up. We have a running engine there. We can go ahead and turn that off now. So if we go back now to our main panel, you can see, let's just turn that Avionics off. So this would be the normal state in which we've been. Now we've got the 2 started engines. We'd turn the 2 fields on. Yep, so our voltage should have come up. Again, they've not. Let's do that on the other side. Sorry, you can't see this. Yeah, I'm just checking the system faults. That's okay, 14.5. Again, some reason you can't do that on the PFD side, but you can check it on the MFD. So once the generators are online, go ahead and switch the avionics and the cross ties on. That gets everything there. You can see the clocks on there now. And I can go ahead, if I want to, switch the autopilot master on. Not that the autopilot's turned on yet on the other side, but that's my means for doing a disconnect as well. You can just turn that AP master off and it will disconnect the autopilot if you happen to have it on, of course. So let's go back to the other side again. So there you see now on the other side, the autopilot has been through its self-check. It takes a little while before you get this little ready up there, and then we're ready to fly. Should have actually put the strobe light on. Forgot about that. I'm not really following a checklist there, just doing it a bit ad hoc. And then what we can go ahead and do is, oh, I've got those turned right down, haven't we? So let's turn those instrument lights on. That's it, yeah. So those instrument lights, and what I'll go ahead and do is change the time of day to be night time. There we go. So you can see now that I can also alter the panel lighting, so that sort of kind of like some glare shield lights or some lights to illuminate the panel, or the panel dimmer there. And then the switches one, the switches dimmer, actually controls the illumination of these. It's got like a green sort of tint like to it, to these green switches here. Let me switch you back to the other side so you can see that. There we go. More of them on this side. So you can actually turn it up quite high, or just have it quite subtle, however you like it. But that's the nighttime lighting. That's quite a nice little effect. Yeah, so that's the G1000 panel. What I'll do now is I'll just load the analog version of this same aircraft. In fact, what we need to do is change aircraft as well. Where is the analog one? There we go. I'm just loading up the analog one now. And here we go with the analog panels. Oh, we're at night, so perhaps what we'll do is just show a similar effect with the nighttime lighting. There we go. So same thing with the analog panel. You can see there's the switches. There's the panel getting brighter and dimmer if we need it to be, and there's the instruments also getting brighter and dimmer. And let me show you the ones on the other side. Let's make that disappear a little bit for us. They're all the analog instruments from the other side. Right, and dim. It works for the GNSs as well. I just haven't got those on at the moment. So just so I can show you the panel a little bit better, let's go back a little bit during the day. That's better. Okay, so what's extra? Lots. From what I did before, the analog panel did actually take a fair time to do. There's quite a lot of work. So the annunciator panel is new. I think from what I showed before, the 6-pack I think was there. Pitch trim gauge, ELT again, dimmers. The layout is obviously very similar to the G1000, obviously this being the analog version. Same 5 switches there. You see the P2008 and master are co-located with the 3 sort of master and field switches near, rather than being up here on the left. The gear switch and lights. A couple of CDIs there for the being driven by the 530 and the 430 on the left-hand panel. I just realised actually I'm not showing you this left-hand panel that I'm talking about, so I'll just refresh again. So the annunciator panel, ELT, dimmers, 6-pack. That's what we talked about. The P2008 and autopilot master switch, which were up on the left on the G1000, are now co-located down here. Landing gear panel, a couple of CDIs that I was referring to, and the avionics and cross tie are in the same location as is the parking brake. And then here on the actual in the sim aircraft, these radios are underneath the radio stack, but there just simply isn't enough physical space. I'm trying to keep these instruments and the radios and everything as realistic in size as I can, on a 22 to 24 inch sized monitor. So with that in mind, rather than trying to make them too small and squinch everything in, I think that looks a little bit more unrealistic than it does perhaps moving the instruments a little bit from their final locations, because there's a bit not enough space, because sometimes you have, as I showed before, overhead panels, or you have a center console where you've got some items in there, as you do in the case of the P2006T. There's a bit of a console that goes down in the middle a little bit where the audio panel is, and a couple of the other controls. So when you're only trying to work on 2 sort of rectangles, if you like, which are 2 monitors, you have to try and squeeze those items from above and below onto the sort of panel space, or have them as pop-ups, which I've chosen to do with the compass and the overhead panel, and on some of my other panels, sometimes the fuel selector or whatever. You just have to do that sometimes just to enable those. You still can manipulate those items, but you perhaps don't want them to be displayed, or maybe there's not room to display them at all times. So these ADF and transponder, I've chosen to locate on the right hand side of this left hand panel along with the clock. They look quite nice there along the side, and then whizzing back over onto the right hand side panel, there's the 55X again with the 530 and the 430, and an audio panel which sits below them in the real aircraft, and then the flap switch and the flap indicator, and then all the analog instrumentation, predominantly for the engine information. So dual of all the things that you'd want to monitor in an engine. So RPM, cylinder head temperature, oil temp, oil pressure. There's fuel quantities there for the left and the right tanks. Manifold pressure, that's a dual needle one, so you can just see underneath there the right. Well, you'll see when we start the engines in a minute, the right and the left needles will go down separately, but that's a one indicator, does both engines. And then 2 fuel pressure gauges, 1 for each engine. And then the rest of them are just a backup standby set of instruments for the flight instruments on the left hand side panel. So there's your traditional 3 with your attitude, your airspeed, and your altimeter, and then you have an OAT gauge and a volts amp meter with a switch there to switch between the left hand and the right hand engine for monitoring purposes between volts and amps. There's another switch on the actual gauge itself. So that's the analog panel. So once again, it has a pop-up overhead panel. Again, we can select left, we can select right. We'll start the right engine first this time. You can see the fuel, well, you can't. Let me just pick that back for you. You see the fuel pressure, or the fuel pump. Fuel pump light has come on as I switch them on. Yeah, you can see the lights come on. Go back to the other side panel. So fuel pump's on, ignition's on, start, and you see the manifold for the right hand, manifold pressure for the right hand engine has come down there. You can see we've got fuel pressure for the right hand engine, RPM for the right hand engine, and these gauges will start to rise. They'll get up into the green, and as will the CHT start to rise. So that's the right one. The left is already on. Fuel pump, ignitions, start. You see the left needle now comes down on the manifold pressure, so now we've got two started engines. We can turn that off, and we can turn our gens on, turn our avionics on. You can see you can get the 530 and the 430 operational there, along with the audio panel, and these nice little Adf and transponder. Control them with a knobster as well. And the clock. So that's pretty much it, really. Just an overview of the two panels. Now they've got all the new instruments in them. I think I just had some placeholder instruments in there before. Now I've got everything completed, and they're in the analog panel. So it's for, just as a reminder, it's for the V-Sky Labs P2006T analog and G1000. You get them in the same purchase of the aircraft. So you've got the two different aircraft with the different panel configurations. So these are the panel configurations for those couple of same aircraft, a couple of different configurations with the panels. I think I forgot to mention the Adf actually before. There's also an Adf on this, because obviously we've got the Adf over here, this little Becker unit. So there's an Adf indicator over on this side for the display of that. So thanks for watching. Hopefully that provides a bit more information and a bit more concise overview and show of the basic video that I uploaded before on the Tecnam. Enjoy. Thanks for watching.